I have asked Tyler to share 15 minutes of his experience, strength, and hope with us.
All right. I'm Tyler. I'm a heroin addict.
Hey, Tyler.
Hey, Tyler.
Grateful to be here tonight. Grateful to be sober. This is like one of the things that keeps me sober today, even when other things fail. Is doing service. And I think early on in sobriety, like when I heard other people tell their stories, like that helped me a lot. I mean, basically, I'll just get into what it was like, and then what happened, and what it is like now, and like because of things that happened, like in my story, like today, I don't wake up craving a drink or a drug, and I can live my life a free man. And growing up, I grew up in 2 hours away from here, and I had like a pretty normal childhood. I had I had really no reason to drink besides that. I was like really bored growing up. My parents partied a lot when I was younger, and like I thought that like if I did worked hard, I could go and party hard, because that's what I saw my family and like their friends do. They worked really hard and they partied really hard, and I thought that's like what adults did. So when I was 13 years old, I had my first drink, and I remember taking that drink with like a couple of my friends and like feeling like I had arrived. I felt like I was a grown up at 13 years old, and I picked up and I continued for 10 years. And in those 10 years, from 13 to 23, I was still on the inside, I was still like a 13-year-old. My reaction to life and just how I lived was kind of like I was stuck at 13 years old. And, so like after that first drink, like it was kind of like every weekend or every couple weekends, I would drink. And then I started moving on to like pot and like trying out some like other substances throughout high school. I didn't really have like any consequences from my drinking and drugging then. That was like when it was fun. It wasn't fun forever. Towards the end it was definitely like not fun at all. But I can say at that point to me it was fun. I had no reason to stop, and I had no reason to think anything was wrong, because like I drank like my friends did. Throughout my whole addiction I grew up, or throughout my whole addiction I like surrounded myself with people who drank like me, or like worse than me, or used heroin or use other drugs like when I wasn't quite there yet, to like justify, I'm not so bad yet. I'm not as bad as they are. I kind of have control of this thing. And what I found out later was like I never had control like of it at all, since that first drink. I remember like even just in high school, like just with like drinking and like smoking pot, like I would just go to like ridiculous lengths to get what I needed, and so I like went through high school, and I did okay in high school, and I ended up going to college. And like when I was growing up, I lived in like a lot of fear. Like my dad was like super strict, and so I would come home, like I'd be drinking and I'd be smoking pot, and I'd come in my house and just like dart right from my bedroom, and I'd like peek out the blinds, and my dad would be like ripping through my car and, finding stems and roaches and seeds and all that, and I'd just be like totally afraid of him. And so, and the cool thing about that, like I used to live in a lot of fear, and like now today I don't have to, if I'm like working the steps, and I'm not leaving anything out, I don't have to live in any fear today. And so I got into college. I came up this way, and I moved in on like a Saturday, and on that next Thursday I was arrested and spent the night in jail. And it was like, that was the first time I had like a lot of freedom. So I just took it and ran. And so yeah, I spent the night in jail. I was resisting arrest, drinking, smoking pot, and my mom came and got me in the morning, and she was like, "All right, it's time to go home. You've had enough of college in these 5 or 6 days. It's time to go home." And I wasn't ready. I wasn't done yet. And I was like, "Haven't you seen all these college movies like Animal House?" And that's what college is about, And so I went on through my freshman year, and I kept getting in trouble, and I was like, you know what, my drinking and my drugging isn't the problem. It's these rules at this place, and that was my reaction to life, my whole time using. It was never me, it was everything else was wrong, and I was always right. It was and I would try to make the world work for me, and I would always end up getting screwed over, and so at the end of freshman year, I moved out, and I moved in this house with a bunch of dudes that, again, drank and drugged worse than I did. And there was where I really started getting into cocaine and pills, opiates, and and that went on for 2 years, where it was just every day was a party. Every day I was doing coke or opiates, and it went on for 2 years. And in those 2 years, I could tell you a bunch of war stories, but it got bad in those 2 years, where at the end of that I was these guys around me are the problem. I need to get out of here and sober up. And at that point, sober up for me meant go back to just drinking and smoking pot, staying away from the hard drugs, because that's all, that's what I thought sober was then. So I moved back home for the summer, and at that point, I was physically addicted to opiates. I moved back home for the summer, I kicked it for a little bit, and I started feeling better, and as soon as I felt better, was when I started looking for him again. And at home, it was a completely different thing. I was just I wasn't in the city anymore, and I was just doing all this crazy stuff to running around, hanging with these super sketchy, super sketchy people. And it got bad again there, and it was it wasn't I was using every day. It was I only had money really to use on the weekend. I hadn't gotten to the point where I was robbing people, but that, it was still at that point, it was just getting crazy again. So I figured the smart idea was to, move back to where I was going to college, and because the drugs were a lot cheaper there, and it was just way more convenient, and I didn't have to hang out with these sketchy people all the time. So I went back to school, and I moved in with a friend who's now in recovery. But when we moved in there, we're all right, we're gonna smoke weed, we're gonna drink, and maybe special occasions we'll get some opiates, and and now thinking about that is just insane, So we packed up the U-Haul truck and we drove up. And on the way, well, we're probably gonna be sore for moving in. We need some opiates. And so we called my buddy who'd been up here, and he's like, those aren't like a thing up here anymore. He's like, I can't do it. He's like, but I've been getting heroin. He's like, but you don't want any. He's like, you don't want none of that. And I go, yeah, you're right. And so I hung up, and like a few minutes later, I called him back. I was like, yeah, I do want that. And I remember like doing my first bag. I did like half of it, and that's I knew that's like what I wanted, and it took, I think it was like 2.5 or 3 years, and you guys know the story, like if you were here, like where it goes. But for those 2.5 or 3, I think it was 3 years, I barely pulled together like probably 15 days sober total. I just took it and ran. And like in that time, like I tried to stop, I really there were points where I really wanted to stop, or like I really had to stop for, my family, for a girl, to make rent. And I would put it down for sometimes like a day or two, or sometimes like an hour, and it's just, I couldn't stop. I remember I tried like marijuana maintenance. I tried being like my own Suboxone doctor. I tried, I tried everything. I tried locking myself in my room and just hiding from the world for like 4 days until I got sober. But like when I would do that, when the withdrawals were over, like my mind would start racing, and I'd start thinking about, heroin, and, I just couldn't shut like that mental craving up. And like, thanks to like HA and AA, doing the steps, like that mental craving that I had, that noise in my head was finally quieted, and it was through the steps in the big book. And so it just went on. It got worse and worse. And I remember towards the end, it'd be like 10 o'clock, 11 in the morning, and I would like come to in my bed, and I was like, really, I have to do this shit again. Like I would hate waking up in the morning, and and like I had no choice in it anymore. It was like I didn't want to get high anymore, but I couldn't stop. I had no say in the thing whatsoever. And I knew like as soon as my feet hit the floor, if I had no money, if no one had dope, like I knew I was gonna get it like that day no matter what. So like I stole money, I lied to people, I manipulated situations to work out for me, and like I would always end up getting high. And at the end, like I just kind of hit like an emotional bottom, where I remember looking at myself in the mirror and I'm thinking like, how the fuck did this happen? Like how'd I get this far? And like I wanted to die, but I was too afraid to do anything about it. And I was just hoping that I would overdose, or someone would hit me with a car or something, and I would die. And because I thought that was the only way out. I had friends who would go to rehab, and on like day 31, they were back with me getting high. I didn't know about HA. I didn't know I was allowed to go to AA, and I just thought treatment didn't work. So what basically ended up happening, I got caught stealing, and I was thinking about this a little bit the other day. Like I was thinking of that exact day when this happened. I don't know why, but my bosses like tried to intervene on me. Like they've seen for months like what was going on, and I just I wasn't having it still. My one way of guaranteed money, either from paycheck or stealing from them, was gone, and I still wasn't ready to give up yet. And that was in the morning of that day. In the afternoon, I went out and looked for jobs and try to figure out ways to get money. And my mom had called me, and she's like, my boss somehow found her number, and he told her what was going on. My mom's like, it's time to get help. And they knew what was going on. I kind of isolated myself from them for a while. And at the end, I isolated myself from everyone. I was pretty much alone. And I hung up on her. I was like, no, I'm fine. They don't know what they're talking about. And then, I go out throughout the day, and things started to get a little harder. And, like, I kind of knew, like, the gig was up, and, like, that at that point, like, I ceased, like, fighting this thing. And my mom called me back again, and she was like, all right, let's get you some help. And that was, like, the first time I was, like, 100% honest without anyone about, like, what was going on with me. So I moved back home. I couldn't get into detox or rehab or anything. And so I just withdrawed in bed for like 7 days straight and didn't sleep or do anything. I just kind of like laid there. And like I was pretty like beaten down. And I finally got into an outpatient program, and like that's where like I learned about the disease and really got into recovery. And I remember around 30 days, like I was getting really sick of the groups. It would be like the same 3 people with the same problems they had 30 days ago, just complaining. And I had this counselor there who he would not, like, every day as soon as you walked in, he, instead of saying hi, he would be like, did you go to a meeting yet? Did you go to a meeting yet? Every single day, and he would show me like, oh, this is a good meeting, this one. And finally, after 30 days, I was so sick of him hearing that. I finally like went to a meeting. I think partly because I wanted to prove like, that meeting's not going to do anything, for me. I don't really need them. I'm not that bad. And but I went and like I went to that first meeting, and I walked in, and that was the first time I've seen people who were happy in sobriety. Because like everyone was just miserable at this outpatient I was at. And that's when I was like, this is what I want. I was 23 years old. I thought that my life was over. I thought I was never going to have fun again, which was totally not true. But I saw these people who were happy in recovery. And like from there, like I think like my first year, I probably went to a meeting every single day. And I did service. I surrounded myself with people whose sobriety I wanted, and it wasn't like it's not like this really easy thing. Like it was like super awkward at times, like asking other dudes for their numbers. It was really weird, like having like 50-year-old dudes like pick me up and like drive me up to like an outpatient to speak or inpatient to speak with people. It was like weird. But like I had to, learn how to, I had to get comfortable being uncomfortable in sobriety. And, I learned a lot from that, and like those guys kind of taking me under their wing. And, and I was at the point like where like I knew if I went back out again, like I was going to die. And like, I had been beaten down so bad by heroin, like I was really willing to do anything to like hang on to this. I just didn't want to lose it. And around like a year sober, I hadn't really worked any steps, and I kind of like was hanging out with some people like who were like half in the rooms, half out of the rooms. Like they were like buying and selling like their Suboxone, buying Suboxone on the street, and like and I was still like living in a lot of fear, about like people who I had wronged in my addiction. And so around a year sober, and I was lucky I made it to a year without a sponsor, but I think it was because I don't know. I did a ton of service, and I just somehow like I think I was on like a pink cloud for a bit. And but around a year, like I finally got a sponsor, and like we went through the steps, and that's when like the real changes like inside of me happened. And then because of that, like people noticed like that I had changed on the outside as well. Like my reaction to life was like completely different. And I went through the steps, and like 1, 2, and 3 was kind of like yes, okay, I didn't like have God like fully like defined on step 2, but like I was just willing to believe. And step 3, like I was ready to do God's will and keep going on with the steps. And like I found out later on through the steps that like what my conception of God is, and it changed throughout these past few years of sobriety. I wrote down my 4th step, did my 5th step, and and to me, it wasn't like a huge deal. Like once I did it, I remember going to meetings and people been saying, "Oh, 4 steps is this big thing, and 4 steps scary," and it really wasn't. Don't listen to those people. And I did 6 and 7, and like the biggest change for me was like from those steps was recognizing like my character defects and like looking through that list and like seeing where they came out during the day and trying to do the complete opposite of that. When I got to like my 9th step to make the amends, that's where like I felt that freedom in sobriety, and I made amends to my boss who I'd stolen a lot of money from. And I remember walking out of there and like I felt a change in me. I finally felt free in sobriety because I was, a year and a half in sobriety, and I was still like I had a lot of fear of people, from my past, like running into them. And like after I made that amends, I really believe that like this program could fix like all my problems, no matter what they were. And I finished the steps, and like I started sponsoring people, and it's been like an awesome experience. And like I was thinking about this today, like lately, like a lot of people have went out and relapsed, and like sometimes I get stuck thinking about it's too bad this didn't work for them, or and I get stuck worrying about them. But like I forget sometimes like of all the people that I've seen this program work in their lives, like the people that have come in, and I get to see them change within a year or 6 months or whatever it is. And that's what keeps me coming is seeing the change in other people, and wanting to be a part of that, helping them change. And I'm like today, like all my problems can be solved by the 12 steps. Like if fear comes up, I can kind of look back in the steps and see like, am I not trusting God, or what I'm not doing today. So I'm super grateful to be here, and thanks you guys for listening.
Thanks, Tyler.
So I got to read the top for a topic. It's from chapter 3, more about alcoholism, and it's basically like the first step. But it says, most of us have been unwilling to admit we're real alcoholics. No person likes to think he is bodily and mentally different from his fellows. Therefore, it is not surprising that our drinking careers have been characterized by countless vain attempts to prove we could drink like other people. The idea that somehow, someday, he will control and enjoy his drinking is a great obsession of every abnormal drinker. The persistence of this illusion is astonishing. Many pursue it into the gates of insanity or death. We learned that we had to fully concede to our innermost selves that we were alcoholics. This is the first step in recovery. The delusion that we are like other people or presently maybe has to be smashed. We alcoholics are men and women who have lost the ability to control our drinking. We know that no real alcoholic ever recovers control. And, that took a lot of time for me to figure out that like I was an alcoholic. And like I'll end with this, and like the sick thing about it, like, is like when I was a heroin addict, like I thought like I was a responsible heroin addict, and I was like, I can control this thing, but like anyone like that's not in recovery, thinks you're like fucking crazy, if you think that a heroin addict with a manageable, heroin addiction is there's no such thing. So at least for me, I don't know. There might be people out there, but I don't know. So thanks.
Thanks, Tyler.